What if I told you that millions of Chinese families stay perfectly warm through brutal winters, spending almost nothing on heating bills? No gas furnace humming in the basement, no electric radiators draining the power grid. Just ancient wisdom, clever engineering, and a deep understanding of how heat actually works. Today we are counting down the most brilliant low-cost heating solutions that Chinese culture has developed over thousands of years. And I promise you, by the time we reach number one, you are going to look at warmth in a completely different way. Some of these methods are so simple, it will make you question everything you know about modern heating. Others are so sophisticated that engineers today are still trying to fully replicate them. Let's get into it. Number 10. The warm window. Chuang He. Most people think windows are the enemy of warmth, and in Western homes, you would mostly be right. Glass is a terrible insulator, and a single-pane window can bleed heat out of a room faster than almost anything else. But Chinese homes, particularly in rural northern China, treat windows as thermal tools rather than thermal liabilities. Here is how they do it. Traditional paper windows using a special translucent paper called jiaoliang. Z, made from sorghum stalks, were stretched tightly across wooden frames. This paper does something fascinating. It allows sunlight to pass through during the day, which means solar radiation enters the room and heats the interior surfaces. But unlike glass, the paper has a slightly different thermal transmission property that reduces nighttime heat loss. Modern Chinese villagers still use a layered approach. Thick padded curtains called mian buchuang lian are hung over windows at night. These curtains can be several centimeters thick, essentially creating a dead air space between the curtain and the window. Dead air is one of the best insulators in the world. The curtains go up before the sun sets, trapping the heat that accumulated during the day. The room becomes its own thermal battery. By controlling exactly when sunlight enters and when insulation goes up, they maximize solar gain during heating hours and minimize loss during cold hours. It sounds basic, but the execution requires real discipline, and the results are remarkable. And here is a small hint of what is coming next. If windows can be turned into heating tools, imagine what happens when you turn the entire floor of your home into a heating system that has been running for 2,000 years. Number 9. Radiant floor heating from the past. Dai Nuan. Before the West ever dreamed of underfloor heating systems, the Chinese were building them into their homes. The principle is called Di Nuan, which literally translates as ground warmth. In northern Chinese traditional architecture, particularly in ancient palaces and wealthy homes, channels were carved beneath stone floors. A small fire would be lit in a separate chamber, and the hot gases and warm air from that fire would travel through these underground channels before venting outside. The stone floor above would absorb that heat and radiate it slowly upward into the living space. Stone and ceramic tile have remarkable heat storage capacity. They absorb large amounts of thermal energy and then release it gradually over many hours. This means even after the fire dies down, the floor continues warming the room for hours. The people would sit, sleep, and live at floor level. And because heat rises naturally through convection, the entire room would eventually warm from the ground up. The beauty of this system is that it is radiant heat, meaning it warms objects and bodies directly rather than just heating the air. Modern forced air heating warms the air first, which then rises to the ceiling where no one benefits from it. Radiant floor heat goes directly into human bodies, sitting or sleeping on the warm surface. It is far more efficient. Today, versions of this system are being rediscovered and installed in expensive modern homes across Europe and North America. The Chinese had it figured out before Europe entered the medieval period. Now, stay with me because the next method is not built into the floor. It is built into the very wall of the room itself, and it is one of the most elegant dual-purpose inventions in human history. Number 8. The Kong. We need to talk about the Kong, because this is perhaps the most iconic and ingenious Chinese heating innovation ever created. The Kong is a raised heated platform, typically about half a meter off the ground, built from brick or clay, and it dominates one entire wall, or sometimes two walls of a traditional northern Chinese bedroom. Here is the genius. The Kang is hollow inside. It contains internal channels, almost like a maze, through which hot air and combustion gases flow from a small stove or fire pit at one end, travel through the entire internal network of channels, and then exhaust through a chimney at the far end. The entire massive brick platform absorbs the heat from those gases as they travel through. By the time you go to sleep, that platform is warm all the way through. It holds heat for 6 to 8 hours or longer. The family sleeps on the Kong, eats on the Kong, gathers on the Kong. In deep winter, the entire domestic life of northern Chinese families happens on this one warm surface. In Inner Mongolia, Manchuria, and the northeastern provinces called Dongbei, temperatures can drop to negative 30 degrees Celsius and lower. Without the Kong, these regions would be nearly uninhabitable for most of human history. The Kang uses so little fuel because the combustion heat is not immediately lost up a chimney. It is captured inside the thermal mass of the platform first, extracted almost completely, and only then does the cooled exhaust leave the building. Efficiency is extraordinary compared to a simple open fireplace. It is warming. It is furniture. It is the social heart of the home. But here is what gets really interesting. What do you do during the day when you are not lying on the Kong? The Chinese solved that problem with something you can carry in your pocket. Number 7. The hand warmer. Nuan Lu. This is where Chinese ingenuity gets beautifully portable. The Nuan Lu, or warm stove, is the traditional Chinese hand warmer. But calling it just a hand warmer undersells it significantly. The design has been refined over centuries into something that is genuinely impressive from an engineering standpoint. The traditional version consists of a small bronze or a copper vessel, often beautifully decorated with intricate engravings because the Chinese understood that objects used daily should also be beautiful. Inside this vessel, a small amount of charcoal or specially compressed incense charcoal called tan huo is placed in a perforated inner basket. The outer shell has many small holes that allow just enough air in to sustain slow combustion without producing dangerous levels of carbon monoxide when used carefully in ventilated spaces. The user holds this device or tucks it into their clothing. It generates several hours of gentle heat from a tiny amount of fuel, but the cultural significance goes deeper. The Nuan Lu was given as a gift between friends and lovers. Poems were written about them. They appear throughout classical Chinese literature as symbols of warmth and care. The emperor's palace had enormous versions of them placed throughout rooms and hallways. Common people carried small ones tucked inside their robes. The efficiency comes from the concept of targeted heating. Instead of trying to heat an entire room, which requires enormous energy, you heat only the person. The human body needs warmth in specific areas: the hands, the core, the lower back. Deliver heat there, and you need a fraction of the fuel compared to space heating. This principle is still revolutionary. And speaking of delivering heat exactly where the body needs it, the next item on our countdown takes that idea to a whole new level using something you probably already have in your home. Number 6. The hot water bottle revolution. Tang Po. The Chinese term for a hot water bottle or bed warmer is Tang Po. And before you dismiss this as too simple, let me explain why the Chinese approach to this technology is genuinely different from how most people in the West use it. In traditional Chinese practice, bed warming was treated as a science. Specific ceramic containers called Tang Po were made from thick glazed stoneware with extremely tight-fitting stoppers. These were filled with nearly boiling water and placed inside the bed beneath the sleeping quilts 30 to 45 minutes before bedtime. The thermal mass of the ceramic retained heat for 4 to 6 hours. The Chinese sleeping system amplified this dramatically. Traditional quilts called beizi were filled with raw silk floss or cotton wadding and were extraordinarily thick by Western standards. When the Tang Po was placed under these quilts, it created a warm microclimate inside the bedding that persisted through the entire night. The key insight is this: you are not heating the room, you are heating the sleeping environment. The Chinese understood that the body does not need a warm room to sleep comfortably. It needs a warm, immediate environment. A room at 10 degrees Celsius feels perfectly comfortable to sleep in if your bed maintains 28 degrees inside the quilts. This saves a staggering amount of energy compared to heating an entire room all night. Today, in Chinese households, electric versions of the Tang Po are everywhere. They plug in for 20 minutes and then hold heat all night unplugged. The principle is identical. The efficiency is the same, But here is where it gets more dramatic. What if instead of heating your bed from inside, you designed your entire house to trap and concentrate the natural heat of the sun? The next method does exactly that, and it does not cost a single yuan to operate. Number 5. The solar greenhouse home. Nuanfang. In rural northern China, particularly across Gansu, Shaanxi, and Hebei provinces, there is an architectural style that looks unusual to Western eyes, but performs like a miracle in winter. These are called Nuanfang, or warm houses, and they are passive solar homes built on principles that modern architects are only now fully appreciating. The structure faces south, always south, with almost no windows on the north, east, or west walls. The south-facing wall is made almost entirely of glass or clear plastic sheeting. Behind that glazed south wall, the interior surfaces are painted dark. The floor is made of thick stone, brick, or rammed earth. The roof is heavily insulated with layers of straw, clay, and sometimes old military blankets called junpo. Here is what happens on a sunny winter day, even when outside temperatures are below freezing. Sunlight pours through that massive south-facing glazed wall. It strikes the dark interior surfaces and is converted to thermal energy, heat. The thick stone floor and walls absorb this heat all day long. By evening, when the temperature outside plunges, those thermal mass walls and floors begin radiating that stored solar energy back into the living space. The temperature inside these homes can remain 15 to 20 degrees warmer than outside, without any fuel whatsoever. Farmers in these regions grow vegetables through winter inside these structures. Animals are kept warm overnight. Families live comfortably in climates that should, by all logic, be brutal to survive in. The whole system costs almost nothing to build compared to a conventional heated home, and absolutely nothing to run. It is pure physics intelligently applied. And if capturing the sun feels powerful, wait until you see what happens when the Chinese figured out how to use the heat of decomposition itself to warm a home year-round. Number 4. Biogas from methane digesters. Zhaoqi. In rural Chinese communities, something that most cultures treat as waste becomes one of the most valuable heating resources imaginable. Methane gas, called zhaoqi in Chinese, meaning marsh gas, is produced naturally when organic matter decomposes without oxygen. The Chinese rural biogas program, massively expanded from the 1970s onward, installed millions of simple underground digesters called zhaoqi across the countryside. Here is how it works in practice. Agricultural waste, animal manure, food scraps, and crop residue are fed into a sealed underground chamber. Inside this chamber, anaerobic bacteria that thrive without oxygen, break down the organic material and produce methane gas as a byproduct. This methane is piped directly into the farmhouse kitchen and used for cooking and heating. The residual material that comes out of the digester after methane is extracted is called zhao fei, and it happens to be an extraordinarily rich organic fertilizer that goes directly back onto the fields. So the farmer creates heat for cooking, creates fuel for light, creates fertilizer for crops, and eliminates waste, all from a single system. The thermal aspect is real. Burning biogas produces clean, consistent heat with no smoke, no soot, no smell. Families that install these systems report that their cooking and heating fuel costs essentially drop to zero after the initial installation. By 2015, China had over 40 million household biogas digesters operating across rural areas. 40 million. This is not a niche experiment. This is a civilization-scale solution. The waste feeds the heat, and the heat feeds the family. But even more ancient than biogas is the next method, one that turns something invisible and universal into a heating system that requires no construction at all. Number 3. Body heat amplification and communal warming, Zhuhuo. This might sound too simple to be on this list, but hear me out because the Chinese understanding of communal body heat as a deliberate heating strategy goes far deeper than just people sitting together in a room. The practice is called Zhuhuo, meaning gathering fire or gathering warmth, and it is woven into the architecture, clothing design, furniture design, and daily schedule of traditional Chinese winter life. The traditional Chinese robe called the Mian Pao was specifically engineered for heat retention. Made from multiple layers of silk and padded cotton, it trapped not just ambient warmth, but the body's own generated heat. The sleeves were extremely wide and long, designed so the wearer could tuck both hands inside, creating a pocket of warm air around the hands and core simultaneously. The collar was high and close-fitting. The overlap at the chest was generous and sealed against drafts. When multiple people wearing these robes gathered in one room, their collective body heat, each adult produces roughly 80 to 100 watts of thermal energy continuously, would raise the room temperature measurably over time. The key was the room design. Traditional Chinese rooms used in winter were intentionally small. The Huai Ting, or receiving hall, might be large and impressive for summer gatherings, but winter living happened in small, low-ceilinged rooms with thick clay walls that would capture and retain whatever heat the occupants generated. Furniture was low to the ground and enclosed. Tables called wei lu zhuo were built over small charcoal braziers, so that diners would dip their knees beneath the table and benefit from the heat rising inside. Every element conspired to gather heat, retain it, and deliver it to human bodies. The Chinese approach was never to fight the cold. It was to concentrate every available source of warmth with surgical precision. And concentration of warmth is exactly what our next entry takes to its most extreme and most brilliant conclusion. Number 2. The thermal clothing system, Neya Wenhua. Inner clothing culture. This might be the most underrated heating technology in human history, and the Chinese version of it is extraordinary. While Western heating philosophy focused on warming the space around the body, traditional Chinese thermal management focused on warming the boundary layer immediately surrounding the body itself. This concept is called Neiyi Wenhua, inner clothing culture, and it involves a sophisticated layering system that creates multiple insulating air pockets between the skin and the outside cold. The base layer, called Neiku, was made from natural silk. Silk has a property that most people are unaware of. Its protein fiber structure creates a surface that wicks moisture away from the skin, while also trapping still air in microscopic spaces between fibers. Still air is one of the most effective insulators known. The middle layer added lofted cotton batting. The outer layer was dense woven fabric that blocked wind, but the true sophistication was in the transitions between layers. Chinese garment makers designed each layer to leave a thin pocket of trapped air against the previous layer. Multiple thin layers with air pockets between them outperform a single thick layer every time. This is the same principle used in modern technical mountaineering gear developed by outdoor equipment companies in the 1980s. China had it in practice for at least 1,000 years before that. There is a Chinese saying, Duo chuan yi keng bao nuan yi fen, which roughly means every additional layer you wear, another layer of warmth you keep. But it goes beyond just wearing more clothes. The Chinese system involved tying, cinching, and tucking specific parts of the garment to seal against wind infiltration at the wrists, ankles, and collar. They understood that cold enters primarily at extremities and openings. Seal the openings, you seal the cold out. Elderly Chinese practitioners of traditional medicine also emphasized warming certain acupoints, specifically the back of the neck called Feng Qi, the lower back called Ming Men, and the navel called Shen Kui, as the most critical points for maintaining whole body warmth. These points correspond to areas of high blood vessel density where heat loss or retention has the greatest systemic effect on body temperature. It is clothing as medicine. It is insulation as philosophy. The entire body treated as a system to be managed and maintained at optimal temperature with minimal external energy input. And now, after building through all 9 of these remarkable methods, we arrive at number 1, the single heating solution that most completely encapsulates the Chinese genius for warmth. The one that has been running continuously in some form for over 2,000 years, without electricity, without gas, without anything that comes from outside the home. Number 1, the huotong and the art of minimal fire. The huotong is a fire bucket, a clay or cast iron cylinder, wide at the top, narrowing toward the bottom, into which a small amount of smoldering charcoal or compressed coal, called mei chu, is placed. The fire inside is not a large fire. It is deliberately kept small, almost dying, maintained at just the point of sustained combustion. The art is in controlling that combustion to last as long as possible while producing the maximum useful heat output from the minimum fuel input. Skilled users would arrange the charcoal in specific patterns. Larger pieces on the outside, smaller compressed coal in the center, a layer of fine ash on top to regulate airflow. The ash layer is the key. By adding or removing ash from the surface of the burning coal, the user could throttle the air supply to the combustion and therefore control the burn rate precisely. More ash means slower burn, less heat output, longer fuel duration. Less ash means faster burn, more heat, shorter duration. A practiced Chinese household manager could make a single ho tong filling last an entire day, releasing heat slowly and continuously, moving it from room to room as needed, placing it beneath a table where a blanket would be draped to trap the heat around the legs and bodies of everyone seated there. This combination of the huo tong beneath a blanket-covered table was called the wei lu, meaning encircling stove, and it became the central gathering point of Chinese winter family life. The grandmother would sit at the wei lu knitting, the children would do schoolwork there, the father would read by lamplight, everyone sharing the warmth of a fire so small it would barely qualify as a candle flame by Western standards. The thermal efficiency of this arrangement is actually stunning when you calculate it. All the heat produced by the huo tong rises and is immediately trapped by the blanket structure above it. Almost none escapes into the room. Almost all of it goes directly into the bodies of the people sitting there. Compare that to a central heating system where enormous amounts of fuel are burned to heat an entire building, including all the empty hallways, unused rooms, high ceilings, and drafty corners. The Chinese solution heats people, not buildings, and that is the fundamental insight that underlies every single method we have explored today. Nuan Ren, Bu Nuan Fang. Warm the person, not the house. Every one of these 10 methods carries that same philosophy at its core, whether it is the Kong, keeping the family warm while they sleep, or the Nuan Lu tucked inside the robe, or the Nuan Fang storing winter sunlight in its stone floors, or the Wei Lu gathering the whole family around a single small flame. The Chinese approach to heating was never about overwhelming the cold with brute force. It was about understanding heat, respecting fuel, and directing warmth with extraordinary precision directly to human beings. That philosophy saved lives for thousands of winters. And honestly, in a world where energy costs keep rising and environmental pressures keep growing, it might be time for the rest of us to start learning from it. If you found any of these methods fascinating, the comment section is wide open. I genuinely want to know which one surprised you most. Was it the 2,000-year-old radiant floor? The Kang that heated an entire family for a night on one small fire? Or that stunning Nuan Fang sitting passively warm in sub-zero temperatures? Drop it below. And if you want to see more content exploring ancient engineering wisdom that the modern world has been too distracted to pay attention to, make sure you are subscribed because there is a lot more where this came from.